students. Here is the video for week 13 that accompanies your final white paper assignment. So I'm starting off this video with the assignment itself, which you've all had for several days now, and hopefully you've read carefully through. So I'm not going to read through it on this video because that would just take up a lot of time. But I do want to scroll through it, and then I have a presentation I'm going to share with you that walks you through how some of the material from this week and next week in the textbook pertains to the white paper assignment. And then I'm going to show you some examples from past students' successful white paper assignments, so you can have something to strive for. I'll show you their papers themselves plus the grading rubric. So, okay, so here's the assignment. I give you some information at the beginning about the genre of the white paper, and I point you to some resources online that indicate the wide breadth of reports that can fall within this general category of white paper. So you're going to want to do some research on your own to see what the parameters are for this genre. So in this report, you're going to, as it says in the second paragraph, be addressing a specific business and technical problem that really resonates with our subject this semester. And that is the problem of preparing students in technical and professional communication for the transition from school to work. Now, you are learning the skills of writing a white paper by following a particular line of inquiry into this subject. But what you learn about writing in this genre is transferable to other subjects you might write about in the future. So what you need to do is think about the STC competencies, which you've thought about over and over this semester, and I recorded a video about last week, and hopefully you've watched and thought about. You're going to think about those competencies, you're going to think about what you've done in this class, and you're going to learn about what UNM requires of students in the technical communication professional writing minor or the certificate program. And then you are going to do some research about what other programs require. And then you're going to reflect on what you learned about the profession of professional and technical communication by speaking to a practitioner. And you're going to think about what some of the gaps are between what students are learning in school and what they need to know in the workplace. So this is going to require primary research and secondary research. In terms of secondary research, that means scholarly articles you're going to find online from scholarly journals in this field, like Technical Communication Quarterly, the Journal of Technical and Business Communication. I might have gotten those words somewhat mixed up, but there are many, many journals in this field that pertain to this focal subject and have published articles on school to work transition. So if you just simply we're just going to go on Google Scholar right now and do a quick search so that I can show you. For example, what I'm doing right now is I just pulled up an article that I happened to write with a colleague that is about the school to work transition. And here's another one that I wrote about the school to work transition. But what's smart to do, if you were interested, is I just found these on a Google Scholar search, but to actually get the full text, you'd have to go through the UNM library database. Here, I'm just searching from home. I'm not logged into the UNM system, and so it's asking me to sign in. But if you were at UNM using a UNM computer, you'd be able to get the full text of this article, and you'd be able to look at the Works Cited page. And on the Works Cited page, you would see many, many other articles listed that might pertain to this subject. Now, I'm not saying you have to use something written by me. I just pulled it up because it was something that I could easily call to mind that was on this subject. But you'd want to do a Google Scholar search or some other scholarly database search for technical communication, school to work transition, or workplace preparedness, or something like that. Okay, so that's your secondary research, and included in your secondary research you can also use the Intercom article that you've read on a number of occasions. Now, in terms of primary research, you actually have to do some sort of study yourself. So that can be a survey. You could come up with a way through using maybe a Facebook group or reaching out to a technical communicator who you happen to know and asking them to distribute a survey, reaching out to a branch of the STC, surveying people who are working in the profession, asking them about what skills they have that they originally learned in school or what they wish they'd learned that they do use on a day-to-day basis in the workplace. So that would be a survey. You could do a questionnaire. You could do an observation if you know somebody who works as a technical communicator. You could observe them in their workplace. With a Sandian, that's probably not going to be possible because you don't have security clearance. And you could do an interview if you know somebody who works in the field. Or you could look at other programs' websites and run data that you generate by looking at the number of courses they require and comparing and creating some sort of graphic that represents that. So the primary research is some sort of study you do yourself that you cite in the report. Okay, so here on the second page of the assignment, I list the required assignment components and the research components, and I give you all of the deadlines. Please note that the final assignment is due on Monday, May 8th at 9 a.m. The 9 a.m. time is different. And then here's the breakdown of points that are replicated in the grading rubric. Okay, so now in terms of looking at other institutions' programs, I've pulled up a few to show you in this video. I've pulled up the professional writing program at Elon University. I just happen to know they have a professional writing program, but you would start with a Google search and search for, you just pick a random university like University of Wisconsin, University of Wyoming, type in professional writing or technical writing and see if you get a program, and then see what they require. This I got to through a couple of clicks. This is the Elon University Department of English Professional Writing Program, and then they happen to have a fact sheet. So I looked at the fact sheet and I noticed what kind of courses they require. So these have numbers, so you'd have to look in their course catalog and see what these correspond to. But this is what they require their students to take. Now here's New Mexico State's. They have an undergraduate concentration in rhetoric, digital media, and professional communication, a bachelor's degree. And then they require all of these courses, not all of them, you have to pick some from each category. And here are the courses in professional communication. And then I picked one more, which is Michigan Tech, which I believe is a Bachelor of Science degree in technical communication. And that's an interesting distinction. Like at New Mexico Tech, it was a Bachelor of Science degree, not a Bachelor of Arts degree. And you can kind of scrutinize the differences between those programs. That would be something that you could do as primary research, is find some numerical way of comparing Bachelor of Arts programs in technical communication to Bachelor of Science programs in technical communication. So these are just three that I pulled for you, and you'll pull your own, and you will cite from these and refer to them in the body of your white paper. And so I'm going to transition now into the presentation that I created for you that walks you through some of the foundational knowledge that you've generated in this class that will contribute to your composition of this final report. And then, as I said, I'll segue after that into the examples of students' work. Now, we are going to review some chapters in this part of the video in preparation to write the white paper. So, Chapter 13, which you read, concerns testing documents. So you've learned a lot about usability testing, and usability testing can concern products and it can also concern documents. So when you're working on your white paper, which as I say here is a light recommendation report or a manifesto, you need to consider who's using it, who is the audience. Now the audience for this particular project is me in that I'm grading it, but I want you to conceive of an audience that is technical communication program administrators. So those are the people who are faculty members who are in charge of program and curriculum design. So you're offering them information. and giving them guidance on how they might think about revising their program if they need to. They might not need to, but they are your audience. So usability of documents vis-a-vis our course outcomes is something that I want you to think about. So one of the outcomes for our course, the first outcome was communicate effectively. So we've been practicing this all semester. So one of the first things this says is that you need to target your readers and listeners. So if your readers for this project are program administrators, what kind of language, what kind of document design, how do you need to synthesize your information so that it's most suited to this audience? Now, Chapter 13 explains that you need to test your documents just like you would test any other product like before you brought it to market. So part of that testing is doing a peer review, but there's some tests that you can perform yourself. So once you learn a little bit more about some of the successful examples of this assignment that I'm going to show you in this video, you can test your own for the effectiveness of its design. You need to think about the honesty of the information that you're conveying in your document. Is it too hyperbolic? Are you saying things that aren't feasible? And then what is your strategy for developing your own ethos in the document? That means your credibility as a writer. Why should a PhD in technical communication or English who's reading this and as a program administrator take your word for it? You have to find some way to establish your credibility at the beginning of your report. And that could just be that your student has done a lot of research about this. Okay, so also from Chapter 13, you need to make sure that your document satisfies 3 criteria, and these are the standards that I've used to shape the rubric. Is your white paper's organization logical? And by viewing examples, and I've given you examples from the online writing lab, the OWL, and pointed you to some other examples, think about your document's organization. Now, do you treat and emphasize your main points consistently throughout the document? Are your main claims supported, and are they well developed? And when you support them, are you using evidence? Are you parenthetically citing? Are you directly quoting? Are you summarizing? What are you doing? Are you providing a data visualization to support your main claim? So here's an outline for white paper from the online writing lab. I'm not going to read through this. You can pull it up on your own on your computer, but it basically says introduction, summary, background, problem, solution, advertisement. If this was something for advertising purposes, you're not really going to be using that part. Conclusion, works cited, and then tips on including visuals and examples. Now this is just one outline for a white paper. If you follow my instruction in the assignment to look at many examples online, you'll see that there's a wide variety of ways for structuring this kind of report. So usability testing, as I said, is something that we've thought about relative to product design. Now, relative to this project, you need to be sure that you are thinking about how the standards of usability apply to the white paper assignment. What does it mean for a report like this to be usable? You should be thoughtful about that question. Okay, now Chapter 18 concerns writing reports. Now, you're not writing one of the genres of reports that your book goes through. You're not writing a feasibility study. You're not writing a findings report or a recommendations report. You are offering light recommendations of a few pathways your readers might take, but you're working sort of in a different report genre with the white paper, which in your own research you'll learn a lot about. So your report must encompass identification of the problem, opportunity that there exists for program revision, establishment of criteria for addressing the issue. Now, what's the framework of the lens that you're going to be using to look at these various programs? So you need to determine options. What might a program do? Like, what actually could they do to improve their program, to address problems that you identify? Assess these options, the various options that they might pursue. How well or how poorly or what challenges would appear when pursuing one of these options. So what are the conclusions that you have? Why is it important to do this? Is it because the STC, the professional organization in this field, expects practitioners to have certain skills that universities aren't actually providing? Or maybe they are, but you can conclude that the programs that you've evaluated really are performing the job that they need to perform. And then the last bullet point here is a summary, a conclusion of possible pathways and outcomes. So note that Chapter 18 includes a list of standard features for recommendation reports on 476. These are good for you to know, but they will not be the sections of this project. You need to use identifiable headings that appear in white papers, not in recommendation reports. So learn a little bit about what the differences there might be. If the information concerning the substance of an introduction is definitely worth considering, and that's on 476 also. So with all the writing projects that you've done, you've probably followed a writer's process, and you need to do that here too. Planning, that's probably the stage you're in right now as you're watching this video. Drafting, maybe you've started that process. Once you submit your first draft, you'll probably start revising. Then you will edit and you'll proofread. This process should be really familiar to you because you've probably done it in every writing class you've had in the university. Now, the revising, editing, and proofreading stages pertain to Chapter 10 in your textbook. There's no explicit mechanics item in your rubric, meaning I don't dump all of the points related to sentence clarity and structure and syntax and punctuation all into one category. However, those aspects matter in every component of the rubric. So know that you will be evaluated on every item for how well you express your ideas and your level of attention to detail for grammar and punctuation and clarity in every aspect of the rubric. So Chapter 10 does talk about grammatical correctness in sentences. Given who your audience is, this is university level administrators, there's no room for failing to attend to sentence level issues, because a failure to do so will impugn your credibility, will call into question your ethos, and will make it seem like you don't have a lot of concern for attention to detail. Now, as a technical communicator, that is something that there is no room for a lapse in. So based on your practitioner interviews, how important is attention to detail on a grammatical level? And the answer to that is very important. All of the practitioners mention that. So Chapter 10 has too many grammatical issues to review here, but you need to review them. And you need to make sure those issues are in your mind during the revising and editing stages. And the course objective of peer review, which is also one of the things that we are obliged to satisfy this semester, this is intended to help you locate some of these problems. Another resource that you should consider using, of course, is CAPS. You can visit CAPS in person, or you can, if you plan ahead, you can have a draft reviewed online. Okay, Chapter 10 stresses specificity. Pages 231 through 236 offer insights on how to write specifically and clearly. So professional writing holds clarity and specificity as ultimately extremely important. And in my grading, I'm a big stickler for specificity. So you can watch this video again and read through all these slides because I'm not reading every word of them here. Document design is the subject of concern of Chapter 11. So this video is just kind of going through the recent chapters and pointing out to you how their content pertains to the white paper. So your white paper's design standard is not predetermined. If you check online for an example of white paper, you'll see all different kinds of iterations of this genre. But you must use the principles of design and your knowledge of document usability to make the document readable and usable and engaging for the audience for this report. So here are the principles design as disclosed in Chapter 11. If you find these in another class like visual rhetoric, you might see more or slightly different versions of these, but in some they are proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. I'm not going to go through them here because they are mentioned in Chapter 11. So your page features, you can write in a column format. You need to be thoughtful about the typography that you use. You need to be knowledgeable about how much white space or how little white space you're using on a page, and you need to be consistent and effective with your use of titles and headings. So finally, I want to reflect on Chapter 6, which was from week 9, and this concerns your use of sources. So I already mentioned in this video that you need to use primary and secondary research sources. They all need to be engagingly and properly incorporated and cited and referenced in a references or works cited page. So that's just a quick overview, a really fast way that I am attempting to collate your textbook reading with this assignment. And I'm concluding this part of this video, this presentation part, with 2 examples on the screen of white papers. As you can see, they're differently designed and they strive to engage the reader in different ways. Here, this one was excellent. Both of the ones I'm going to show you got a 96 or something like that. So you'll see that this student uses a 2-column format. He used some call-out boxes that really shine a bright light onto some of the data that he collected. He has an abstract, which is a quick summary of the whole project. And he quotes from Simon Cordero, which this was the practitioner that he interviewed. And he has some other parenthetical citations. This one is the Bureau of Labor Statistics that he's raising in his introduction. He talks about the purpose of the report very explicitly, and he has a section on the STC competencies. That is really important. I will say that this sidebar containing all of them might be a bit overdone. That's a bit overwhelming. You don't need to just kind of repeat verbatim all of the competencies in some sort of graphic. But if you're going to include the competencies even in a shortened form, like just their names maybe, including them in a graphic is a really effective and concise way of including that content rather than including it in the body of the text. So he quotes from the article from Intercom that you all read, and then the student talks about his methodology for testing technical and professional communication program patterns. So this student happened to be a computer science student, and he says that here, and so he's establishing his ethos. He says, I'm a computer science student, so this is what I did. He wrote a little computer program that tested the websites for a certain number of technical communication program websites. I don't remember how many. He says 8. And so then he measured how often these words come up in their websites. He was hoping that he would reach some sort of rich conclusion based on what showed up and what didn't. And then he analyzes the results and says what that means. Why is that significant? Does that point to what these programs value? Does it point to what they don't value? And he contrasts this with the profession. And then he has some possible solutions. And then a conclusion. He comes back to Simon Cordero here at the end, which shows continuity from the beginning to the end of the assignment. Okay, so this student, here's his grading rubric here. I mean, he got a 96%. I really appreciated the abstract. He had some lapses in logical flow and comment usage problems, and just a few things that he said that were not actually accurate. And I thought that he needed to set up a little bit better the results that he was going to present, like provide a little bit more context, a buffer before he just jumped right into those results. Now I'm going to move on quickly to another student's examples. And this is another student's, and this student also used a 2-column format. And she used a graphic here that was much more concise. As you see, the 9 competencies of technical communication didn't take up a whole sidebar like the previous students did. Now, this student also has a cute graphic that shows all the programs whose websites and programs she studied in order to make her conclusions. This student did an interview as her primary research. So she went back to her original practitioner and did a much more immersive interview based specifically on certain questions. Now, that's something that you would have to arrange, and I don't want everybody to try to do that because that would really overwhelm the practitioners. So, as I said, interview is just one option for primary research. Doing some sort of data analysis like the previous example did, or doing a survey. These are all different strategies you might take. So quickly, you just see that this student analyzes secondary research and calls this out in its own section and cites a lot of resources here that help her to reach conclusions and recommendations. Now, because this isn't a recommendations report, you don't have to forthrightly come right out with recommendations. You can have a more holistic final section that suggests some trends and offers some thoughts for the future for these programs. And this student's project, let's see here, received also a very high grade, 97 in this case. The writing was incredibly clear here. Let's see. I just had some comments about quotations that were too long. And I complimented her for the way that she used her secondary sources. Anyway, as you can see, it's a very successful report. I don't know if it would be useful to you all to see some reports that weren't so good, but if anybody wants to see any of those, you can just email me and I will do my best. But I'm going to sign off on this video because it's been very long, and just let me know if you guys have any questions.